because I have 3 screens in front of me. So that's why. Right, let me just share that. Okie dokie. Okay, right. So hopefully everyone should be able to see that now. Right. So firstly, a little bit of an introduction. My name is Vida Koster. I am currently a senior liaison and recruitment officer for the US and Nordics at UCL. And before that, I was a postgraduate admissions officer as well. So I've spent many moons at UCL assessing applications and speaking to applicants. And today I'm just going to go over a little bit about UCL. So I'll give you an introduction of who we are as an institution and why I think you should study with us. And then we'll go over the postgraduate application process at UCL very briefly, because obviously, apart from applying for the scholarship, you do need to also apply to study for a degree. So I just wanted to give you the lowdown on how you can actually apply to UCL. And then we're going to go over a little bit about student funding. So I will tell you about kind of Marshall Scholars at UCL and briefly about just US students at UCL, generally speaking, before finally finishing up with just a brief overview of other types of funding that are available. And the reason that's in the presentation is obviously I want all of you to get the Marshall Scholarship, but it is quite selective. We have 2 Marshall Scholars per year typically. And so we do have some other funding opportunities, including some that are specific to US students that I just wanted to highlight, and hopefully, hopefully you can make use of some of them. Throughout the session, feel free to post comments in the chat. Obviously, I can't see them, but I will at the end, and I'll leave a few minutes at the end for anyone who has any questions. Cool. All right. So UCL, who are we as an institution? So just to kind of give you a brief overview of our history, we are 200 years old this year. And so we were established in 1826. And back then, England had 2 universities, and they were reserved for a very small number of people. And London had none. And so that meant that opportunity that kind of normally comes with educational attainment was reserved for a very few people. But London especially was a changing city at the time due to industrialization and innovation and things like that. And so it brought people from all over the world. And in 1826, we actually became the largest city in the world. So our founders established UCL because they wanted to basically open the door into higher education to everyone. So we were the first institution to actually award degrees to university degrees to women on equal terms to men, as well as to people of all religious backgrounds as well. The first in England. And so because of this, UCL kind of became the place where ambitious people could make use of opportunities that were previously not available to them. We grew very quickly. Can I just say, I can hear some noise. I think someone isn't muted, and I don't know if maybe you could mute yourself. Thank you so much. But okay, so we from the start have been a very innovative place. So we invented the telephone, we discovered the structure of the DNA, we have had a lot of research success, and we have actually grown to be the largest university in the country. So we currently have 55,000 students from over 150 countries. So we are very much a diverse student body. So about half of our students are international and about half of them are postgraduate versus undergraduate. So that means that it's a very diverse campus. We are currently ranked number 8 in the world. And I always like to say when I do these presentations that rankings are not everything and they should not kind of be the main way you decide where to study, but they can be a good indicator of quality. And QS World rankings are a fairly robust measure of the reputation and the research strength of an institution. So we like to include that. Yeah, so we have ranked very highly for about the past 10 years and have a range of courses in the top 10 as well. We are a very proudly interdisciplinary institution, so we don't specialize in anything in particular. We have currently 11 faculties, so it's likely that if you are interested in a course, you can find it at UCL. So we have obviously, arts and humanities, social sciences, medicine, engineering. We have basically everything except nursing and veterinary medicine. So yeah, whatever your interest, you can probably find it. And we have over 700 postgraduate degree courses. And I would just sort of suggest when you're looking what sort of course you may want to study at postgraduate level that you do really cast a wide net, because sometimes they have kind of, I guess, titles that are maybe not the most obvious. So rather than being called like Master of Science in Economics, which would just sort of be a very straightforward title, it may be something a bit more, a bit different. But we do have quite a range, and they are designed with kind of industry requirements in mind. They are designed by people who are at the top of their game academically, the departments. So yeah, really, really fantastic options. We um, So yeah, we are a global community. Part of our global reach comes from our research. We are definitely an absolute research powerhouse. We, for example, recently developed a genomic test to help patients with breast cancer avoid chemotherapy safely and be treated for other means. We slow down the progression of Huntington's disease for the first time ever. That's a type of dementia. Our staff work with NASA on rocket launches. We've designed, we've consulted with governments of other countries on designing entire kind of education systems, et cetera. So we regularly advise businesses and governments on various aspects, and that really comes from the fact that we do top of the line research at UCL. So we are currently second in research power only to Oxford in the UK. The reason this is relevant for you as a student is obviously because that then gets brought into the classroom and informs teaching. So like I said, our courses are designed to develop very specific skills needed in each discipline, and specifically at postgraduate level, you'll definitely have a lot of research. There's going to be a big emphasis on research, even if you're doing a taught program. So that's skills like critical thinking and literacy, etc. And then I will kind of go over uh, I'll go over a little bit the other points on student clubs and societies a little bit later. I just wanted to kind of show you where we are. Hopefully some of you have been to London, but if you haven't, this is an aerial view of our main campus. So this is our Bloomsbury campus, and that's where we were established in 1826. And you can see here the bit in yellow. So the main image, sorry, the green copper roof of the Wilkins building can be seen there. That's the main building. And then you obviously have Oxford Street there, the British Museum, so we're right in the heart of the city, very well connected with basically anywhere, the rest of the city. Essentially, we also have a hospital, so we have a few hospitals that we work with in London, but University College Hospital is one of them. So if you were studying one of our medical programs, you might be based there as well. And then we actually have another, there we go. We have another campus, so that's UCL East. UCL East was opened a couple of years ago, and this is that's a very interesting campus. So it houses, firstly, actually, I should introduce it. So this is the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, and it's this new area in Stratford in London. It houses our courses in things like the creative industry. So lots of our digital media courses are there. We have some kind of urban development courses there as well. The Global Business School for Health is in that campus as well, and we're surrounded by places like the BBC, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and stuff like that. You can see here in the distance the School of Management. So that's technically like a third mini campus in Canary Wharf, which is one of the business districts. And that one really it is just our business courses. So things like banking and finance and a master's in entrepreneurship and stuff like that will be located in the School of Management. And then UCL at here East, so this bit here, in yellow at the bottom right corner, that's basically the way we here east is, it's a separate independent home of making. So it's basically where tech entrepreneurs and designers get together to essentially make stuff. That's the whole purpose of it. And we occupy 6,000 square meters in this space. And we basically, of a few years ago, our architecture department asked themselves what they could do if they had a really big shed. And the answer was to buy up a whole bunch of space here. And so we have things like uh, huge rooms for prototyping. We have 3D printers. We have thermal chambers, acoustic chambers. It's really designed for engineers and architects to actually be able to do the design work that they need to develop practical skills in their discipline. And it's a really, really cool place. Okay. Speaking of facilities, I just wanted to mention a few more here. So, regardless of the discipline that you study, UCL is very, very well equipped to give you the resources that you need to make the most of your teaching and your research. And so everything that I mentioned will in some ways be available to you as a student, depending on, of course, what course you're studying. So for example, generally speaking, we have 17 libraries. We have 4 million books, both in print and online. We have tons of academic journals. We have 3 on-site museums. We have, I mentioned some workshops already, manufacturing workshops and design studios, but then we have things like propulsion labs. So really very well resourced. And, if you were, for example, to study archaeology, so that's the top middle picture there, you'd have access to something like 80,000 archaeological samples. The little robotic dog in the bottom left corner, that's a robot called Spot, and it's basically used to collect data from very difficult natural terrains. So things like volcanoes and mine shafts and things like that, where researchers can't really go themselves. We have lots of virtual reality labs. So for example, our pharmacy students can be trained on how to use very expensive equipment, but in a more relaxed setting without the fear of causing damage. Now, obviously, you do also get access to actual equipment. It's not all virtual reality, but that's just, a cool thing. So yeah, very, very well resourced, and you will certainly, it's a bit like a candy store, no matter what you need and what you like, you'll be able to find it at UCL. Okay. So I wanted to also speak about how, obviously we are 200 years old, but we are hopefully going to be here for another 200. And one of the ways in which we are thinking about our future is through the lens of sustainability. We are, it's part of the fabric of the university to be sustainable, essentially. We're the most sustainable in the UK and the third most sustainable in the world. And that actually is like based on robust data. So we send zero waste to landfill. We're completely powered by renewable energy. We do currently aim to be a net zero carbon institution by 2030, which we're really working towards as well. Another thing, the pictures here are from some biodiverse spaces that we've planted around campus. We were all planted 10,000 square meters. I am aware that you probably know the metric system, so I'll try and calculate this in my head. But that's, a very large space of biodiverse spaces as part of our Wild UCL campaign as well. And it's definitely there's like a few reasons why we place such an emphasis on sustainability. Partly it's because we do quite a bit of research in our biodiverse spaces as well, but it's also big, to promote health and well-being as well, and the well-being of our community. And so regardless of what you study, you'll engage with sustainability somehow as part of your course. Okay. And then your student experience, you're here to study, but you're not just here to study. So hopefully you'll be able to find your people. And we have a fantastic student union who takes care of our societies and sports teams. So we have over 430 societies, including an American society, if you want to watch Super Bowl or do a Thanksgiving party. But then we also have things like, debating, theater, dance lessons, and stuff like that. So it's a very fun student community. There's always something going on campus, always an event. We have a very packed social calendar. We also very much want to provide support to our students kind of outside of the classroom. You'll have lots of academic resources, but then we want you to be in the right headspace to actually make use of them. So we have a lot of well-being support. So you'll get a transition mentor if you want. You don't have to have one, but you can sign up to get a transition mentor to help you adjust to university life, and that's another student. We then have counseling services. We have a chaplain and kind of interface support like that, and as well as if you stay in UCL accommodation, we also have accommodation wardens and student residence advisors. So they're basically there in our halls to take care of students and create events for them, but also be there as well-being support as well. So there's a lot on offer, and it's because we want to provide a very holistic support for you, so you never feel like you kind of have to face issues alone, regardless of whether they're academic or personal. Okay. Now, the first slide mentioned we have over 500,000 alumni currently all over the world, and our alumni go on to do absolutely amazing things. Some really cool examples are, for example, Emma Thomas and Christopher Nolan. They're filmmakers. They have a new film, Odyssey, coming out this summer, but you probably know them from like the Dark Knight trilogy or Oppenheimer. We then have Demis Hassabis, who set up Google DeepMind, and Coldplay, the band, was set up at UCL. So we have alumni in a variety of industries who go on to do absolutely incredible things. And part of the reason is because we have a lot of career support for our students. So I just briefly, it ranges from, actually, hold on, I think that's on the next slide. So there we go. So we do one-to-one support. So that's, someone can read over your CV or mock interview you and things like that. We have tons of guidance on how to access internships and placements. So we can run events that are kind of both individual, where you meet with a careers consultant, but then you can also go to sector insight events and careers fairs. So we had over 900 employers come to campus last year and things like that. We are the most targeted university in London for graduate employment, and that's because employers know that we, create very good, strong graduates. We also, if you are more entrepreneurially minded, we can provide support for entrepreneurship as well, including mentoring and funding. So we actually have we call it an entrepreneurship hub. So it's basically like a hatchery incubator program where if you have a startup idea, you can have access to funding and mentorship. And they really kind of train you up on everything from IP law to how to market your business. It's very holistic. So an example here on the screen is YourQ. They essentially, this is a couple of our alumni, and they, whilst they were students here and a little bit after, created a kind of wearable tech solution that patients can wear outside of the hospital to monitor their vitals and things like that, to improve patient care, basically. But then we've also had people who set up a startup to create healthy condiments for sandwiches. And then we had others who create jewelry from recycled metals. So whatever your idea is, you can make it happen at UCL, really. So yeah, and this, I think it's I think, what was it? Something about how our startups have basically generated something like 180 million pounds in income in the past few years. It's very well developed entrepreneurship support for our students. And we currently have 527 active student startups. Oh, sorry, I should say it was over 100 million in investment raised by the startups. That's the number I was thinking of. Sorry, too many numbers. It's not all about the numbers, of course, but it is quite an impressive entrepreneurial track. Okay, so that was a brief whistle-stop tour through UCL. I do also want to just tell you a little bit about how to actually apply to be a student here, because I'm conscious that it's quite different from the US. So it's just a couple of slides, and I'm just going to go over briefly the process and how you can actually submit an application. So first things first, our postgraduate applications will open in October. So it's usually mid-October each year, and they run until the summer, but the deadlines vary. And so the main thing I really need to get through is that I would suggest, if you're interested in a course, to really pay attention to the deadline that's on the online prospectus page, because they will vary. So one course will, applications will close in March and the other one will go until June. So please do pay attention to that, because we don't typically accept late applications. Our decisions go out on a rolling basis for postgraduate studies. So that means, if you apply in October, you'll get a decision before Christmas, unless, something really extraordinary happens or there's an interview process. I will say, though, by and large, we don't interview. Um, we I do also want to mention that we only process complete applications. So that means that you need to have, your referee has to send in the reference. You have to submit your degree documents, and that will be your bachelor's transcript. If you're still studying when you're applying, which is completely normal, then we would expect you to submit a transcript of all of your bachelor studies to date. If you have already graduated, however, you can also submit your degree certificate as well. And then, of course, we will need a personal statement. So um, actually, each prospectus page for each course will tell you what information you need to put in there. So that's the obvious things, like, why do you want to study this course? But there's usually a few questions that you have to answer. And the personal statement is 2 pages max. So don't go writing a whole little short story of 10 pages. It has to be 2 pages max, normal sized font as well. Um, and in some cases, our courses will also require an interview or a portfolio. That's for art programs. Some of them will require a dissertation summary, so you have to kind of explain what sort of research you'd want to conduct as part of a course. By and large, though, it is a very straightforward application process, and most of our courses will not have those additional requirements. Usually, the application process is in 2 steps. So we have an initial assessment where essentially your application goes through to the central admissions team, the graduate admissions team, and they are divided up in teams per discipline. So for example, when I was in admissions, I was in the School of Life and Medical Sciences. So that's all they process. So they are basically experts in those courses. And then they can either make a decision themselves, or in some cases, they'll pass on to the academic department for the second step of the process for an additional review. And because that varies, it the process varies for this. So that's another reason why the processing time for our applications varies by course. And then once you get a decision, hopefully it's an offer. I'm manifesting an offer for all of you, but you'll have a few deadlines in your offer letter, so it's really important to read that very thoroughly. So there's deadlines to pay a deposit. Usually that's about 10% of the tuition fee. I will say, actually, if you have a scholarship or are applying for a scholarship, you can get an extension on the deposit deadline, or even a waiver of the deposit requirement. So that's definitely something to consider. We are quite flexible with that. And then, yeah, you have to accept the offer and clear any conditions of the offer. It says here, like, English. That's obviously, if you're a native English speaker, that doesn't apply to you. And the deadline to clear conditions is usually September, so you have plenty of time. A few things to keep in mind. Pay attention to deadlines, like I said, so they're advertised very clearly, and processing times vary. So I mentioned that already. We will only ever email you, so check basically your inbox for any emails from us. Our emails have an annoying tendency to go to spam, so just make sure that that's all, that you're kind of paying attention to that. And make sure that you use an email address that you'll actually have access to after graduation, because students sometimes will use their university email address to apply to us, and then they lose access to it in the summer. So just make sure that it's something you'll have access to. And then visa and HSS requirements. Yeah, so obviously you'll need a student visa to study in the UK, so just kind of look into that early. Most of you on this call will probably not need an ATAS. That's nationality specific, and US nationals do not require this certificate. And if you ever need to contact us, you can always get in touch. So we have a country rep for the US, which is currently me. And then we also have admissions contacts. So we're very open to getting questions Anytime you have any question, please do get in touch with us, and don't hesitate. Processing times for these do vary because we are quite a busy team. For reference, I think last year we got something like 90,000 postgraduate applications. So it's quite a busy team, but we are there for any questions you may have, and please do feel free to reach out to us. Okay. Right. Just a little bit about funding postgraduate studies now. So we're going to move on to the funding portion of the presentation. And to begin with, kind of before we go into the Marshall Scholarship, I did want to just give you a little bit of an overview of US students at UCL. So we currently have, so in this academic year, we have 1,400 US students and in every faculty, right? So across the 11 faculties, and most of them are postgraduate students. So yeah, mostly they're at the graduate level, so that's taught masters or PhDs. We do have an American Society newly re-established in February this year, which we're very excited about. So they organize things like different events and film screenings. They have plans for a Thanksgiving party. So yeah, lots of cool things planned there. And in addition to all the other societies, of course, as well. And like I mentioned, we have a U.S. country rep, so that's someone in recruitment who knows UCL recruitment inside and out and can always advise you based on your particular circumstance, your particular background. We have had, so I got this data from the student funding team. We've had 29 Marshall Scholars. We are a partner of the scholarship, which means that essentially each year we fund tuition fees for up to 2 Marshall Scholars. And we've had, as far as we can tell, we've had 29. But to be honest, we did only go back a few years. So there may have been more, but it's around 30. Oh, someone's coming into the presentation. Okay. So we've had 29 Marshall Scholars, and I'll show you the courses that they've done later. But we, this year there's one studying disability innovation, for example. So it's actually a wide variety of courses that they've done. And we like to organize catch-ups for our scholars in the fall and the spring. And the student funding team will also run networking events in November and July. So that's where you get to meet all the other scholarship recipients at UCL. And it's another way to develop a good network whilst you're studying with us. Now, the next slide is about eligibility. I'm not going to go in depth here, so this is more just on your screen. You can take a screenshot. All of these instructions are on the Marshall Scholarship website, but I just wanted to include it in the presentation as well to briefly say that generally funding is for 2 years, occasionally 3 if you wanted to do a PhD, but mostly students get it for 2 years. And because in the UK, most of our master's programs are a year only, that means that students can do 2 degrees on the scholarship. So actually every Marshall Scholar that we have this year at UCL is on their 2nd degree under the scholarship, which is quite cool. And there's some eligibility requirements, so please do look into this very carefully to make sure that you're eligible, because there are some restrictions. So some of them are on the screen here. And then I briefly also wanted to mention just the deadlines for the scholarship. So and kind of the process for that. So you're applying for through your undergraduate institution, and they have to endorse your application. The deadline to submit your application is the 29th of September. So I think the reason that I wanted to mention this is because obviously the main thing is you are applying for the scholarship before you start applying to university courses. So if you are selected, the offer will be conditional on obtaining an offer from a UK university. So you're going through this process first, and then you can start applying to UK courses once those applications open, and typically that's in the fall as well. And for us, it's mid-October. Okay. And then briefly, so this is just as part of the application, you do need to submit quite a bit of written work, which is it's good that we're having this session now because you have kind of the summer to really work on this and you are in a good place that you are thinking about this fairly early in the process. So, there's an obvious personal statement, there's, statements on leadership and potential and kind of what you plan on doing after the scholarship and things like that. So, very good that you're thinking about this fairly early. And again, any further instructions, please do consult the website because it's actually very, very thorough. But just to kind of give you an indication of what you might be able to study at UCL on the scholarship. So this is slide 1 of 2. So it's just an overview of courses that our Marshall scholars have studied, and you can see that it's really literally everything, right? So obviously quite a few in politics and kind of humanities, United States studies, Caribbean and Latin American studies, and then there's some who did built environment, urban sustainability, and stuff like that. So it's a very um, it's good that it's a scholarship that's quite open to people with a variety of interests. So that's one list. And then we have also had students, we've had students on the Marshall Scholarship in every faculty, and this is just the second bit of that. So education studies, we've only had one in medical sciences, so hopefully someone on this call is interested in medicine as well. We need to bulk up those numbers, but yeah, it's really it is really for everyone, and we're very happy that we've had so many wonderful students find a home at UCL. Okay, right. Just to briefly kind of finish up this presentation with looking at some other funding opportunities that are available for you as a postgraduate student in the UK. Um, the the reason this is here is because, like I said earlier, the Marshall Scholarship is quite competitive. And so while I want everyone on this call to get the scholarship, we can only fund this institution funds 2 Marshall Scholars per year. So I just wanted to reassure you that there are other options, and there are also options that are worth thinking about fairly early on. So mostly, obviously, Marshall is a full ticket scholarship, and that's not the most common. So most of our postgraduate students will do what we call jigsaw funding, where they combine different sources to meet the overall cost of their study. So that's things like loans, scholarships, part-time work, etc. Unfortunately, this year the Grad Plus loan has been withdrawn. We don't know if it will be reinstated, which means that for US students looking at federal funding, the limit is around $20,000. And the rest will have to come from other means. We do mention loans here on the slide, but I would really caution you against kind of personal loans because they can actually have very high interest fees. So please just very carefully consider whether that's the best option. But yeah, there are scholarships that are either merit-based or based on financial need, both in the US and the UK. And one thing we would just encourage you is to consider living costs. So we estimate those to be around £25,000 per year, but obviously it depends on your lifestyle and kind of your preference as well. So it's not a hard and fast rule that you'll have to pay £25,000 a year for things like accommodation and food and stuff like that, but it is a fairly realistic number. So it's just worth considering in your budget. In terms of funding at UCL, we have a number of options. So firstly, we have a scholarship finder tool, and that will allow you to see the full list, essentially, which I'm not able to go through in this presentation. But if you're applying for our International Masters Awards, that's that's more like an umbrella, like a funding umbrella, where you submit one application and are then considered for all the scholarships under that umbrella that you may be eligible for. So it's actually pretty straightforward. And this year we will have 85 scholarships available under this umbrella. They're £15,000 each, and the deadline to apply for them is in May. So you'll have plenty of time, again, hopefully you get the Marshall Scholarship, but if not, you'll have plenty of time to start preparing for that application. One thing, again, that I would want to note here is that as you're applying for your postgraduate courses, you would also be looking to apply for funding alongside that. So rather than kind of doing it as a step-by-step process where it's, apply to university first, then wait for an outcome, then apply for funding, I really would very strongly encourage you to start looking at funding opportunities early on, because deadlines vary so much depending on whether it's a UCL scholarship or an external organization or charity or whatever else. And sometimes students get caught out by deadlines. And to avoid that, please do start kind of treat it as like a parallel process. So one side is you're applying to an academic course, and the other side is you're looking for funding. And they very much happen concurrently. Okay. And then finally, I did want to mention we have very generous alumni in the US. And so we have a UCL Friends and Alumni Association, again in the US, and they fund some scholarships for us each year for up to 4 US students. And that's specifically for master's degrees. So while the Marshall Scholarship can technically be applied to a PhD, this particular scholarship is only for master's students. So we have one to the value of $80,000, which will cover the full tuition for, oh, I should say they're subject specific. So one of them is for environmental and sustainable development, and that's $80,000. That will cover the tuition and your maintenance, and travel costs and things like that. And then we also have 3 scholarships of $20,000, which are for the MPA program, and then some programs in machine learning, and then one in dementia as well. The application process is fairly similar for all of them, but you basically will apply directly to the department. And then there's a selection process. So I've included a website here on where you can find more information. So that's the Friends and Alumni Association website there, and you can find all the information there. There's some more information on our website as well, and please do look into that because it's it's specific to U.S. students, and it's fairly generous funding. Okay, cool. I think that's it from me. I will see if there's any questions now in the chat, but I did just want to say you can always get in touch with the student recruitment team as well as admissions. So that's our main email address. I am currently in this role, but then Fiona Rushworth will be coming into the role from the end of July. So if you email us before then, feel free to get in touch with me. But if you kind of email us in the new academic year, then I would suggest that you get in touch with Fiona. And I have included her email address here on the screen for you now. Okay, cool. Right, I'm just going to stop sharing and see if there's any. Oh, someone has very helpfully said that 10,000 square meters is 100,000 square feet. So yes, we've planted a lot of biodiverse spaces around campus and around London. And yeah, but yeah, so hopefully you've found it useful, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. Yeah, Christina, go ahead.
Thanks. I imagine this depends on the faculty, but in regards to prospective students who are applying, what's your advice on them reaching out to individual faculty they want to work with, and what's the potential for them to hear back?
Yeah, sure. So actually, each course will have a designated contact on the website. So they're fairly accessible. Depending on the time of year, they may be a little slower than other times, but they will respond to you. I think what I would suggest, though, is that you consider why you're getting in touch with them. So if you have questions about the actual application process, that's more for admissions or recruitment. If you have questions about the course content, that's definitely something for the department. So there will be a designated contact for you there. This is different, though, for taught programs than PhDs. With PhDs, you would still have a designated contact, but before you even think of kind of actually applying for a PhD, you would be identifying a supervisor and stuff like that. So that's a longer conversation that you're having with the department. But for taught programs, yeah, there's a designated contact and you can ask them any questions about the course content that you may have. Cool. Right. I think I've wowed you all into silence. That's good. I never know if that's a good thing. But hopefully it was helpful. Any
Yeah,
other questions, guys? Oh,
I was just going to say, by all means, if there are any more questions, but you do have Vida's email address if you think of anything later on. Obviously, if there's anything that we can help with in the Marshall Secretariat, feel free to contact us. But
yeah,
if there's
definitely.
no more questions, maybe we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I should actually, can I just briefly plug our newsletter? So you can sign up for a newsletter, and we do visit the US regularly. So we're in the US multiple times a year. We do public events as well. So do sign up to the newsletter to kind of hear more about that. That's on the prospectus. Or maybe I can very quickly add a link.
Yep.
Okay. Can I find, yes, I can. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'll just add that to the chat. But yeah, we travel, yeah, like I said, to the US. We also travel with other institutions like Imperial or Warwick or King's. So you can attend some public events, meet us in person. I'm always happy to chat.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Vida. Thank you, all of you, for attending, and hope to see you next week again at Marshall Mondays. Thank you. Good
Bye.
night. Have a lovely day.